The Fellowship of the Great Physician welcomes you to House Call. Our hosts today are doctors of chiropractic, Dr. Gerald Lala and Dr. Richard Jensen, who is also a board-certified acupuncturist, practice independently in North Oaks, Minnesota. Let's join our hosts for today's program that will assist you in your quest for optimum health and well-being.
Welcome to House Call. I'm Dr. Gerald Lala.
And I'm Dr. Richard Jensen.
Great to have you with us again. We're talking about today enjoying healthy bones, and this is actually the third part of it. We're doing a series on healthy bones based on a questionnaire that we make available to all of our patients, as well as anyone who writes us or telephones us and requests one. There's no charge for it. But this issue about osteoporosis and osteopenia is becoming almost pandemic now, and there are ways that it can be stopped naturally. There are ways that it can be treated naturally. One doesn't have to take drugs to stop it or to prevent it. And so we're sharing many of the wonderful principles of things you can do to enhance your bone health. Some of them you may be familiar with, and that's fine. So this would be a watering experience, while there are many others that we're discussing in this series, in this questionnaire, that will bring new light to you in how you can treat osteopenia or osteoporosis if you've been diagnosed with it, and or prevent it if you don't have it. So Dr. Richard Jensen is going to discuss first a little definition of the difference between osteoporosis and osteopenia. Dr. Jensen?
Thank you, Dr. Lala. Well, osteoporosis and osteopenia, they both have to do with bone demineralization. So osteopenia is actually the loss of calcium in the bone or a weakening of the bone. And then as that condition progresses to be to a pathological point where you're going to start to have collapsing of bones and fractures and so forth, that is where osteoporosis. So the difference is the sameness is they're both the loss of calcium to the bone. The difference is that one is much less severe than the other. Osteopenia is the precursor to osteoporosis. So then, we look at the stories the bones can tell. The stories that the bones can tell us a history of calcium loss. It can tell us a history of arthritis. It can tell us a history of accidents that have taken place. There's a lot of history that's found within the bones, and from what you can see in the x-rays. And so that's what we're going through now, is to look at the history of what the bones can tell as it relates to osteoporosis and osteopenia. Within that, we will go to HRT, which is also known as hormone replacement therapy. The question is, have you been or are you currently on hormone replacement therapy? This can make many differences in the body. Is it used for building up the bone? Well, many times when we do take hormone replacement therapy, it's done orally, and that is only one or maybe a couple of the different types of anabolic steroids that help rebuild the body. The problem is when you take them orally, they have to be processed through the liver. And as we know, the liver is a huge manufacturer of chemicals in the body. Primarily, it manufactures cholesterol. It also manufactures estrogens and testosterone to a much lesser degree than the adrenals or the ovaries or the testes will make, but it does do it. Now the thing is if your body is dealing with the oral hormones that have been taken, it actually is a signal that helps or depletes, takes down, reduces its ability to create other types of hormones, such as insulin-like growth hormone. Insulin-like growth hormone is like growth hormone that's also released, and those two hormones are huge anabolic hormones that work with the repair of the body. And guess what? The body is constantly breaking down and rebuilding bone all the time. It's through osteoblasts and osteoclasts working, which are the cells that do the building up and the breaking down of bone to make it, to renew it. And so in this case, if you are taking orally these hormones, it can be also stunting those effects as well of bone replacement, and therefore may be problematic with osteoporosis. Dr. Lala, how about the next question?
Another excellent question that men and women need to address is, are you on a natural hormone replacement therapy? So Dr. Jensen was talking about HRT, drug-based hormone replacement therapy. Now the question is, are you taking a natural hormone replacement therapy? And the second question that goes with that, are you taking a natural food supplement hormones? So there's a difference there. And it is important to know that, and your doctor should know that. Now, because that's so important, what we're going to do is talk to you about the hormone basis. We're going to talk about the estrogen hormones, and we're going to talk about the corticosteroid hormones, because both play significant roles in the health of your bones. Dr. Jensen?
Thank you, Dr. Lala. Well, as we look at this slide, we have the creation of the anabolic steroids, which most of us recognize as estrogens and the testosterones. But if we look at the very top of this flow chart, we see it all begins with cholesterol. It actually can begin even before that with the carbohydrates that we're eating, which are processed as acetylcholine. And out of 7 of those, we create cholesterol, or should I say our livers create cholesterol. Again, another thing that the liver has to create. So as we go back to this cholesterol, from that we get pregnenolone, and then pregnenolone is the precursor to 17-hydroxypregnenolone. And then from there, that's the precursor to DHEA. And DHEA, we find a lot in the literature about that, in the popular books about hormone replacement, where DHEA is used to help people who are having hot flashes and menopause, to help regulate that. But many times people will abuse that and end up actually throwing their balance of their hormones way off by doing that. And in some cases, we find a increase in bone destruction going on in their body due to them supplementing too much DHEA. DHEA will go on to etiocholanolone, and androsterone is created from DHEA. It's also a precursor to androstenedione. And androstenedione we heard about years ago, that some baseball players were taking that as a precursor to testosterone to build up their anabolic hormones in their body to build more muscle, and so that they could hit more home runs. And so from androstenedione, we have the manufacture of testosterone. And as you can see, the double arrows between androstenedione and testosterone show that those two will go back and forth between the two depending upon the balance in the body, or should we say other balances in the body that influence this reaction. Also from the androstenedione, we see that it goes down into creating the family of estrogens in the body, and 3 of those chemicals that are estrogens are estrone, estriol, and estradiol in the body. Now, as we switch from the hormone analysis to the corticosteroids, from the anabolic steroids to the corticosteroids, we see again that we start from cholesterol and go on to pregnenolone, and so we've deviated here after the pregnenolone into progesterone. And progesterone is one of those that it's named progesterone in that it promotes gestation or childbirth. It allows us to maintain the fetus in the childbearing years or while you're pregnant. And so progesterone is present in females and males alike. We both need it, and it helps promote bone growth as well. Progesterone, if we went down the left side of this flow chart, goes into creating deoxycorticosterone, which then is the precursor to corticosterone, and then to aldosterone. And aldosterone, we use that a great deal of time to regulate the water within our body, regulate, it helps regulate blood pressure from that point of view, in that the more blood you have, or the more liquid you have in the blood, the more it has the volume to create blood pressure in that case. Then if we go to the other side, from the progesterone, we go to 17-hydroxyprogesterone, and that's a precursor to 11-deoxycortisol. And guess what? Now we were talking about blood pressure on one side, and on the other side we're talking about the stress hormones such as cortisol and cortisone. And people who have high amounts of stress may go into the stress fixation, and they will continue to secrete cortisol and cortisone. And it's very interesting in those people, as the cortisone and cortisol go up, the DHEA in the other flow chart will actually drop as that's sustained. And that sustaining of cortisone and cortisol actually signal the breaking down of tissues. They're anti-inflammatory type hormones, but also we find that they'll have a balance of breaking down bone and send you more into osteoporosis. So those people who stay and maintain in a stress fixation, they may find themselves more predisposed towards osteoporosis. So in this case, we're really looking at a 24-hour urine hormone analysis, as looking at all these different hormones in their stages, for really finding or having a tool, to measure the types of hormones and where the imbalances can be thrown off. And then guess what? You can't manage something if you don't measure it. If you don't measure it, you don't know what's going on, and so you don't know how to treat it. And therefore, it's a very important test to use. Dr. Lala, do you have any further opinions on this?
I do, and I cannot overemphasize the importance of learning how to manage your health. That you just don't take calcium, or that you just don't take food supplements out without knowing from science-based diagnostic testing what your body needs and what it doesn't need. These tests are not costing thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, when you compare a blood test, a yearly blood test, to that of an MRI or a CT scan or a body scan, it's incredible how much expensive those other tests are. And as good as they are not telling you the microscopic biochemical activities of your body. And even though they're saying take calcium, and there are millions of people taking calcium, wonderful, but as you're going to see here in a minute, many of the forms of calcium that people are taking, many of the forms of vitamin D that they're taking, are very, very difficult for their body to metabolize. So that then brings us to this next question that Dr. Jensen is going to address. Do you take calcium supplements?
Well, do you? Do you take Oscal or Tums or Caltrate or Dolomite or coral calcium or oyster shell calcium or MCHC, which is microcrystalline hydroxyapatite is what it stands for. And if you do, how many milligrams per day are you taking? Do you know how many milligrams per day that you should be taking? These different forms of calcium, are they actually being absorbed? They have different absorption rates. Are they bioavailable to your system? Are they a complete bone nutrition so that it allows for their absorption into the bone much easier? Microcrystalline hydroxyapatite is actually the form of calcium that is in the bone. Now it differs from bone meal, which is basically, you know, when we slaughter cows for meat and so forth, they take the bones. In order to use all of it, they grind it up and they make bone meal. And of course, that would be a complete bone food is what they would say, but is it really absorbable? I mean, our fingernails contain a lot of amino acids. I mean, you can't find a better source of amino acids than your nails or your hair. The problem is you can't digest it. So they find people who, you know, if they're eating hair or chewing their nails and eating that, they find that they stay in the stomach a great deal longer than needs to be, and in fact, they can have problems with if they're building too much of it up. You just can't digest it. So that's why, you know, like cats have to cough up the hair that they're licking in as they clean themselves. They can't digest it, okay? So if you're taking a calcium that you can't digest, it's not doing you any good. We see x-rays in our clinic that you're looking at the gastrointestinal tract. Of course, unless it's calcifying, a lot of times you can't see it. What you do see are these little tablets through there. And they look at it and say, wow, are those little, you know, tumors or things growing? No, it's calcium tablets that have not even begun to break down, okay? And that really looks at what your gastrointestinal tract is doing, as well as how digestible is the form of calcium that you're taking, okay? Let's go on with Dr. Lala.
One of the most common forms of calcium sold today are dolomite or bone meal, calcium lactate, and calcium carbonate. Interestingly, the reason that they use them is that they're so inexpensive to produce. Number two is it causes to make more money. And I know that that's the American way, the American system, but the fact is that they are very, very difficult to digest and absorb. And what they do is they do a lot of hype around them, a lot of advertising, a lot of testimonials, or you go into a lot of health food stores, and many of those people working in health food stores are acting like chiropractors or nutritionists or like a medical doctor, giving advice which they're not supposed to, because then they would be practicing medicine, chiropractic, or nutrition without a license. And they get away with it, and people listen to them, and they think they're an authority. I mean, gee, if they're working in a store, they must have some authority, and they're no more educated than what the literature the company educates them with. They do not have the scientific understanding or basis, by and large at least. I mean, there may be some out there, but I have yet to meet them, okay? The object of being there is to sell, 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 and make money. Now, why would I want to take something like calcium-based calcium carbonate or dolomite or bone meal when it's very difficult for my body to break down and absorb? Then all forms of calcium, even the best form of calcium, as Dr. Jensen mentioned here, microcrystalline hydroxyapatite, those are taken from the earth or from animals, all calcium, all right? They all have toxic metals in them. There is no ground left on the planet Earth that doesn't have contaminants in it. So the companies that are unscrupulous are going to take that calcium and the other electrolytes or minerals, and they're going to take it from whatever source is the cheapest for them. And because the government doesn't, by and large, analyze their products, they can sell it and get away with it. So I won't recommend any form of calcium that isn't based on microcrystalline hydroxyapatite, or one that is, but it has that the company refuses to submit an independent laboratory analysis. Because I would be negligent in my patient's health by not recommending what was best and that I know is a purest product possible. It's the same thing with the importance of vitamin D. Vitamin D can be toxic to the human body. It's needed. But again, how many milligrams of vitamin D are you taking? They come not in milligrams, but in international units. So you can take too many of them. But a good product, a good calcium product, will always have the right ratio of vitamin D in it. So that's the key. Now I want to ask you a couple other questions that aren't on our screen. Have you had any blood tests of the following blood tests? The bone density test is giving us an x-ray. It's not really telling us what biochemistry is going on the bone. It's showing us a byproduct of biochemistry, but it's not telling us how much calcium is in the bone, how much vitamin D is in your body. So it needs to be matched up with the following blood tests, and these are called markers, electrolyte markers. Not only calcium, but magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, guess what? Homocysteine, because it plays a significant role not only in cardiovascular health, but in bone health as well. Vitamin D, as I mentioned, and C-reactive protein. Now, C-reactive protein, we're using that again for inflammatory situations such as cardiovascular disease. But those minerals need to be checked. And the most scientific way of doing that is through blood analysis. So I think that I would be negligent in prescribing those types of food supplements to my patients if I didn't have these blood tests to prove that they need it. And so that I can measure if they do need it, that I can measure how many milligrams to recommend to them. So the next question Dr. Jensen has before him.
Have you recently had a barium study or nuclear scan? Well, these studies are shown to show contrast on x-rays. Okay, and so what you're using is a substance that is either used for uptake into the system to show contrast on x-rays to see either where blood flow is going or to see where there's new bone being laid down, and therefore you want to use something that will be absorbed into the bone. Many times these things can be radioactive, but you know they want to use they need something to be able to be seen, but you just don't do this haphazardly either. Many times when they're using nuclear substances, the person, notice when you go in there, the person, what they do is they hand you the stuff, you know, with protective glove, and immediately after they hand it to you, they take a step back so that they're not hit by the radiation as well. Now, sometimes it's needed for that, to see where hot bone places are, to see if there's cancer being formed in the bone, and you need to see those. But at the same rate, you're having some toxic minerals that may be absorbed into the bone, and it behooves us to see how we can, if we can see those things. And toxic minerals, there's tests for that. Most notably, and what you hear many times, is a hair mineral analysis. And that's useful for its sensitivity, in that it checks what's been going on for the last 6 weeks or so. That it can see in that new hair growth, which is a depository of minerals that are being excreted from the body, to see what minerals are in there, or such as toxic minerals. But after that, you may want to see whether they're biologically active. And so in the biologically active, then we turn towards the blood tests as well, and see further studies on not only your electrolytes, as we talked about earlier, as Dr. Lala mentioned earlier, but also the toxic minerals, because what they will do is they will interact in areas, or kind of replace certain good minerals in the body, and therefore disturb the function or the flow of the metabolism in the body. Dr. Lala, do you have further thoughts on that?
The next question is really your question. Have you or are you presently taking any of the following? And I'll address that for you. We'll see those listed up there for you. Foxamax, a very, very common one today. The nasal sprays or prescription vitamin D, all of these can predispose you to actually more osteoporosis. The next question is, have you or are you taking broad-spectrum antibiotics? If you are or have been, they will destroy not only the bad bacteria, hopefully, but also the good bacteria within your gastrointestinal system, which will upset your digestion, and which then affects the absorption, the digestion and absorption of your vitamins and minerals. The next one is Dr. Jensen's, and would you take that, my good friend, please?
Thank you, Dr. Lala. Have you or are you currently receiving chiropractic care? Chiropractic care, as you can see, we don't just check into the into bone alignments, but we are checking the bones themselves to see whether there is a problem within the bones, whether you could withstand an osseous adjustment. And looking at that from that point of view is we're also checking things where it might simply go undiagnosed until you have had a fracture or some compression of nerves due to the collapse of vertebrae in your neck, or have the onset of some mysterious pain from something that you didn't know why it took place. It just all of a sudden went wham. And so we're trying to look at things from that point of view to stop them from happening beforehand, because things are much more treatable or easily treated when you're in a prevention mode rather than after it has taken effect. And once it's taken afterwards, then you've got all this pain and things to deal with as well. Dr. Lala?
Next question would be, do you suffer with chronic neck, mid, lower back, or hip pains? Certainly, as doctors of chiropractic, we see many people with those kinds of issues, and they need to be addressed. Now, I realize that there are some chiropractors who don't take x-rays. That's their choice. It's within their legal statutes to not do this. They don't want to. Many of them don't because they don't own an x-ray machine, or they're not going to refer the patient out, or because the HMO that they're involved with won't pay for the x-ray. Well, my question is, I don't want, this is a personal thing now, I don't want anybody manipulating my bones if they don't know what's going on inside of there. How do I know that this neck ache or this backache that I have isn't due to osteoporosis or osteopenia? How do I know that it's not relative to a tumor, to cancer? And these things should be ruled out just as much as before any person has surgery. What do? They're doing an MRI or a CT scan. They're doing some type of radiological evaluation. They're doing blood chemistry tests to see what the internal chemistry of that body is doing. And I believe that if you're going to really look after your body and take a serious look at it, that before you have chiropractic care, you should have really current x-rays made of it, particularly now if you're suffering with chronic neck, mid, lower back, or hip pains. Next question that I would have that we have in our questionnaire: did your chiropractor, if you do receive chiropractic care, send your x-rays out for a second opinion? Certainly, the education in chiropractic colleges and radiology is excellent. It really is. I'm very proud to have graduated from an institution like Northwestern Health Sciences that has a wonderful radiology department. But you know something? Those people, those radiologists, see more things than I'll ever see in practice because they're reading films all day long. And so we send all of our x-rays out for consultation.
Absolutely.
So when your chiropractor made x-rays, did he sit down or did she sit down and give you some illustrations and show you those x-rays and explain them? Did they give you a copy of the radiologist's report and explain that to you? So it's part of your health history. See, to see is to know. To not see, it decreases the ability to manage your health. It really does. So again, next program we do will be on osteoporosis. Got a few more of them to do. If you're interested, they're going to bring up the telephone number now, and you can write for this questionnaire and the information that we're sharing here. We're happy to share this exact information with you. So remember, your body is not your own. God created it. It's His property, and we're called to be good and faithful stewards of it. We really are.
The Fellowship of the Great Physician, through its School of Health and Healing, provides classes each Thursday evening. The primary focus of these classes is biblically based spiritual health and healing, with a brief teaching on physical health and healing. There is no charge or registration fee for these classes, but a free will offering is received. For further information on the School of Health and Healing, class time and location, or the topics discussed on today's program, contact us at the Fellowship of the Great Physician in care of Dr. Lala or Dr. Jensen at 200 Village Center Drive, Suite 100, North Oaks, Minnesota, 55127, or telephone us at 651-484-8521. Thank you for joining us today.